Hey friends, good morning to our viewers in Canada and to friends watching from around the world. This is Skyjet Wings. Today, we're talking about whether Canada is ready to defend itself if the world situation keeps getting worse. This includes Russia's actions under Vladimir Putin against Europe and our allies, and also pressure coming from right next door.
Sergei Lavrov, one of Putin's top officials, has said that World War III has already started. He says it's a different kind of war, not just fighting with weapons, but using pressure. Part of that pressure against Canada is economic. The goal is to weaken us and break us. Donald Trump has said he wants to apply that kind of pressure, but Canada is not breaking. So today, we'll look at that situation.
We'll also talk about the idea of creating a 300,000-person volunteer army in Canada. This would be a huge and unusual step, especially right now, and we'll talk about whether it could really work. First, I want to correct something I said earlier. I criticized our national broadcaster and said this issue wasn't being covered. That wasn't fully fair. Our main news show, The National, did do a big report on the idea of a 300,000-person volunteer army. What stood out to me, though, was how doubtful and negative the discussion was. Many people seemed to assume it couldn't be done.
I want to challenge that thinking, and that's a big part of today's conversation. Before we get into all that, I want to mention the incredible messages we've received from our democratic allies around the world. Suzanne Farber from Germany wrote to say thank you. She talked about joining peace protests in Germany in the 1980s and being arrested for opposing missiles placed near children's playgrounds. She says she knows how to stand her ground and won't back down. That's the point. Resistance isn't led by famous leaders. It's led by everyday people standing up for their neighbors. Suzanne, thank you, and sending you a big hug. Here in Canada, I remember those same days, marching against missiles and believing change was possible. And we did help change the world. Rachel from Wales wrote simply, "Trump can go to hell." Short and clear. Christopher Jantz wrote from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, sending love to Canada. He also thanked Charlie for standing up for democracy in the United States. Someone wrote, "I wish I could check out your band, Grievous Angels. You must play songs by Graham Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers." Graham Parsons was a huge influence on many musicians I know, but my band, Grievous Angels, doesn't actually cover his music. Still, you can find us on our Bandcamp page if you want to listen. Heath Cornbeef writes, "Kia ora," or "Hello," from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Stay strong, Canada. Cindy Aurora sends love to all the people standing up for democracy all around the world. Wayne Bistro writes, "Trump says we don't have any of the cards." Well, here in Canada, we're not playing cards, we're playing hockey, and Trump doesn't even have a stick. Elbows up, gloves off. Anyone who thinks Canadians are always polite has clearly never watched a hockey game start. On the topic of local expressions, Alistair Moen writes with a Newfoundland story. He says that when he was in the Air Force, he once told a French coworker to tabernacle off, meaning get lost. The reaction showed it was the first time that guy had ever heard that. His father-in-law says tabern instead, and he had to ask what the difference was. Language is a funny thing. All right, let's get to today's main topic. Before we talk about the CBC being critical of the volunteer army idea, let's talk about military readiness. General Marie Kerrigan, the head of the Canadian Armed Forces, recently gave several interviews. She said Canada is ready to act if needed. This woman is the real deal. She grew up in a mining town. She's known to be an excellent dancer. She served in peacekeeping missions in the Golan Heights and in Bosnia. She commanded Task Force Kandahar. She has many medals, including some from the United States. She talked about how much the global threat has changed. Back in 2000, Canada got rid of many air defense systems because we were focused on fighting insurgents, and air defense wasn't needed. But now, she says, the situation is different. The skies are no longer safe by default. Airspace is contested again, and Canada needs to rebuild its air defense capabilities. That raises an important question. Is this about defending against threats from Russia, or are we also thinking about risks closer to home, south of the border? She also explained that Canada's regular military force currently has about 65,700 soldiers. The goal is to reach 71,000. Recruiting over the last 2 years has actually gone fairly well. Last year, the target was 6,400 new recruits, and they reached 6,600. This year's goal is 7,600. She was also asked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the United States, we've seen the Pentagon remove information about famous Americans, including the Code Talkers and figures like Jackie Robinson, and even remove a black leader of the armed forces.
General Kerrigan says Canada values differences in people and backgrounds. In the military, having different skills and experiences matters because blind conformity can be dangerous. She wants to build a wider support network around the military, including civil servants, emergency services, and stronger communities. This likely connects to the idea of a volunteer citizen army working alongside the regular forces. She says Canada is ready. While I'm not a military expert, Canada has real experience. Our forces fought on the front lines in Kandahar, trained troops in Latvia and Ukraine, and learned modern warfare firsthand. Canada also has deep experience from past conflicts like the former Yugoslavia. Because global threats are increasing, Canada has to seriously assess its readiness. That's why the idea of a large volunteer citizen army matters. It's a big and unusual idea, something we haven't seen since World War II. When CBC's The National covered it, the tone was skeptical. The focus was on problems, recruitment, training, equipment, and whether Canada could even deploy such a force. Some experts said it would take years and a major effort to convince the public it's necessary. Others doubted that a lightly trained reserve force could handle emergencies or war.
Murray Brewster knows far more about the Canadian military than I ever will, and I respect him a lot, but I understand grassroots organizing. Watching that report, I kept thinking, this is not about teaching people to drive tanks in small towns. It's about building a grassroots movement that can support the larger effort to protect Canada. I don't know General Kerrigan personally, but I like the way she's thinking. What she's describing only works if it's built from the ground up. We should be organizing local teams made up of people who already have useful skills: first aid, IT, radio communications, search and rescue, evacuation, and traffic control during emergencies. Trained people at the local level can make responses much faster. If this is run only through military bureaucracy or HR systems, it will move painfully slowly. We've seen this before. During COVID, using existing programs would have delayed help for months. Instead, Canada's civil service created CERB almost overnight and got money to people quickly. That happened because they thought outside the box. That's the mindset we need now. This isn't just about uniforms, marching, or boots on the ground. It's about creativity and using the real strengths Canadians already have. This matters because of lessons from Ukraine. Many Ukrainians didn't believe a full invasion would happen in the modern world, so they weren't fully prepared. When it did happen, it was ordinary citizens who stepped in front of the Russian advance and slowed it down before it reached Kiev. In places like Sumy, small groups of civilians didn't fight head-on. They disrupted supply lines and logistics. That kind of local, citizen-based resistance made a real difference, and that's the kind of preparedness we should be thinking about.
In Sumy, there were only about 50 trained soldiers and very few heavy weapons. The Russians didn't even bring air defenses because they didn't think they needed them. That turned out to be a mistake, especially once drones appeared. The defense of the city was mostly led by ordinary citizens. There were a few thousand people with rifles, a small number of anti-tank weapons, and no heavy equipment. Still, by mid-March, Russian forces were afraid to enter the city. That's what a real people's defense looks like. Canadians understand responsibility. When it matters, Canadians step up. I hope Sergei Lavrov is wrong and that this global conflict doesn't grow. I hope Trump is defeated and things calm down. But hope isn't a plan. When I look at how Trump talks about Venezuela, openly threatening and demanding money, it sounds like gangster-style power politics. He believes that kind of pressure works. He already talks that way about Canada, too. Am I saying Canada will face what Venezuela faces? No, but we can't assume we're immune. That's why building resilience matters. It sends a clear message. Don't try it. Not now, not ever. Time and again, people underestimate us, and time and again, we stand up and prove them wrong. I'll end with this idea. We don't control what others do, but we control how we respond. We do our best. That's how we get through dark times.